Good evening. Welcome to the special meeting of the fiscal year 2018 proposed budget on this Thursday, November the 9th, 2017. And may we have a roll call, please?
Here.
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 Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here. Would everyone please stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, we're going to have the first reading and adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2018 annual budget. The executive summary reads as follows. The proposed fiscal year 2018 annual budget is submitted in accordance with the Code of Ordinances of the Township of Abington and the laws of the Commonwealth, specifically the First Class Township Code and related laws. This budget for Board of Commissioner approval holds all township property taxes, user fees, and other rates at fiscal year 2017 funding levels, with fiscal year 2018 general fund expenditures equaling general fund revenues, where the general fund balance will not be used to supplement expenditures in fiscal year 2018. The township is well within the timelines prescribed by the township's administrative code for budget adoption, as formal adoption of the fiscal year 2018 proposed budget with final and official adoption of the fiscal year 2018 budget being no later than December 31st, 2017. The tentative date for final adoption is Thursday, December 14th, 2017. Now, previous board action results are, since the presentation of the preliminary budget on October 18, 2017, and with the consensus of the Board of Commissioners, the only amended changes to this proposed budget to the preliminary presented on that date was $100,000 added to revenue projections and an increase of $100,000 in the general fund to fund the communications position. The other change was to add back to the capital fund $10,000 for improvements to the park system. So the motion to adopt the fiscal year 2018 proposed annual budget for all funds, including the capital improvement program, will continue. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Township Manager Richard Manfredi for the summary of operating and capital funds.
Thank you, President Luker. The summary of operating and capital funds for fiscal year 2018 revenues and fiscal year 2018 appropriations is broken down into the operating and capital funds. The operating funds have the general fund with revenues projected to be $39,338,103 and appropriations $39,338,103. Sewer operations fund $8,868,099 and appropriations $8,868,099. Highway aid, also known as the liquid fuels fund, $1,686,876 and $1,767,178. Retirees medical, $1,707,500 and appropriations $1,507,500. Tuition reimbursement, $5,000 in revenues, $15,000 in appropriations. Workers' compensation, $752,000 revenues, $977,000 in appropriations. Refuse, $5,812,325 and appropriations $5,867,549. So the total operating funds are $58,169,903, and the total appropriations are $58,340,429. Note that in those cases where appropriations are greater than revenues, we are utilizing reserves for those differences. Capital funds. The capital funds are the sewer operations fund, the capital fund that is named permanent improvement, the capital fund that is refuse, and the capital fund that is for sewer capital. The funding level for sewer operations, $35,000 with appropriations at $35,000. The capital permanent improvement fund, 1,877,271, and appropriations of 1,877,271. Refuse capital, $54,000, and appropriations, $54,000. Sewer capital, $15,000, and appropriations at $15,000, for a total of $1,981,271 in funding level and $1,981,271 for appropriations. The total budget, $60,151,174 in appropriations and funding levels, and revenues and funding levels, and in appropriations, $60,321,700.
Thank you, Mr. Manfredi. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Vice President Stephen Klein for a summary of all funds to be adopted as part of the fiscal year 2018 proposed annual budget, and they are as follows.
Thank you, President Luker. General fund. The general is base operating fund of the township. Revenues and expenses for fiscal year 2018 annual budget are equal and is balanced at a total final fund budget as $39,338,103. The sewer operating fund is the non-capital operations fund for sewer operation of the township. The proposed budget for this fund does not increase sewer rent charges over the 2017 calendar year. The proposed sewer operating fund revenue and expense budget for calendar year 2018 is $8,868,099. The proposed budget for the refuse fund for 2018 is $5,867,549 and does not increase residential refuse fees as defined in Chapter 92 of the Code of Township Abington. The $55,224 variance between revenue and expenditures will be funded from reserves. The revenues for this fund, the Highway Aid Fund, are derived from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania liquid fuels tax and are for specific and restricted transportation-related activities. The 2018 budget expenditures are $1,767,178 and utilize $80,302 from the reserves. Healthcare. Monies supporting this fund are inter-fund transfers and contingent upon the passage of the general fund, sewer fund, and refuse fund budgets. These retiree healthcare budget includes $200,000 in additional revenue to partially fund OPEB, other post-employment benefit obligations. The budget for this fund for calendar year 2018 is $1,507,500. Tuition reimbursement. Tuition reimbursement fund is a restricted fund to show and provide for tuition and training reimbursement for employees. The fund budget for 2018 is $15,000 with $5,000 in revenue. The difference of $10,000 is funded by principal cash. Compensation. Funds appropriated for workers' compensation are inter-fund transfers and contingent upon the passage of the general fund, sewer fund, and refuse fund budgets. The difference between revenue and expenses is $225,000, is funded from cash reserves, and the total workman comps fund budget is $977,000. Capital, sewer infrastructure, permanent improvement, and refuse. The source of income for the capital funds are derived from the transfer of excess revenues over expenditures from the general operating funds or from general obligation notes for the specific purpose of funding board-approved capital projects specifically. The fiscal year 2018 appropriations in the amount of $1,981,271 is being funded by capital fund unappropriated fund balance. Therefore, I make a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2018 proposed annual budget for all funds, including the capital improvement fund, and I so move.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. At this time, I'll take comments from commissioners or staff. If there are none, I'll take public comments at this time. If you kindly come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and please acknowledge our 3-minute speaking rule.
I'm sorry, what's the last part?
Name and address for the record, and please acknowledge our 3-minute speaking rule.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you, sir. Name and address.
Sure, my name is Martin Smith. I'm at 636 Kirkwood Avenue if you're looking at the sign, street if you're using GPS. First of all, I just want to thank all the commissioners because I know the hard work that you put in. You get a small stipend, so if I have any budget motion, it would be to give you more money to do this thankless job. So thank you for that. I shared some questions with Commissioner Rothman that I printed up. I don't expect to answer today, but I'll share with you afterwards. I followed the budget the last few years because my background is finance and accounting. I worked indirectly with Commissioner Hecker at University of Pennsylvania and prepared a very complicated budget there. $550 million in sponsored programs, $47 million in service centers and so forth. And I think what's missing from this process is not scrutiny of expenses, because I couldn't tell you how much you would need for police officers or for public works. But I can tell you that I don't see revenue projected, and I don't see the year-over-year fund surplus factored into the revenue projections. So for example, the last fiscal year where there's audited financial statements online is fiscal year 16. The township, to its credit, saved $1.1 million in expenses, along with $3.4 million in extra revenues. You had a $4.5 million surplus. However, the revenue projections for 2018 still seem to be on the same 5% trajectory. So you have a 12% excess in revenue, but you're only projecting a 5% excess in revenue. So really, what I'm getting at is that you're overcharging the citizens. And I would like the commissioners at some point in this process to consider a tax decrease, because if you're collecting 12% more than you need, it's not fair, not to someone like me, but I think of all the senior citizens on fixed incomes, the people that are watching us on this video when it's aired, they're the people that are really impacted the most by this. So I have a few other questions that I don't necessarily have time for. Just give quick highlights. Uncollected taxes, there doesn't seem to be any discussion about taxes owed to the township. Seems to be a large gap between what's budgeted in terms of $38 million and what's usually spent, $60 million. Business taxes, as we know, there's a lot of retail businesses closing, and we have 42% of overall taxes come from businesses. No discussion about that impact on the township. Pension funds, which is probably the most boring topic you could think of, appears to be very low funded overall at 85 and 78% as of fiscal year 16. So I'll share these questions for a later time, but I would just ask that, I was just a little concerned. I saw online, Commissioner Spiegelman, you have a lot of really good information that you share, so I read your newsletter a lot, and you talked about an awesome budget and a fast-track process, and
That was my quote.
and I just wanted you to take pause and look at the revenues, because I just want to make sure that there's some public comment on it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments.
Can I put this in for the record? Pass it.
Give it to Township Manager Manfredi. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Smith. Any other comments from the public on the budget, proposed budget?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So I'd like to thank Mr. Manfredi and Mr. Barron, particularly for accommodating some questions and some things that need to be understood, as I believe should happen regularly in this township. Might be a new day, that would be lovely. So I am left with a few questions still, and my most pressing things that I'd like to put out here for you are how the budget is laid out and how one as a citizen can look at it and calculate what's going on. Mr. Manfredi's offered to still spend some time with me and to help me get through some of the things that we need to understand, but each year they were laid out differently. We had liquid fuels as a separate fund one year and so on. You could never calculate what the whole budget was. In a financial statement from 2014, we have an $80 million budget. Okay, where actually we have a $60 million budget, but if you went looking through the thing for a budget, you would mostly find a $30 to $40 million budget. So those kinds of things need to be made clear when you're working, not if it's your own business, but this isn't your own business. This is our business. You oversee it for us. We need to know that you understand it, which I don't think a lot of you do. It's not written in a way that easily is understood, and I'd like to work with the township to help change that. Including that this particular budget actually made one step backwards. There are a lot of steps forward, and I appreciate that. I think that's from the new input that we have. But there is one step backwards, and that is that we used to have a section, for instance, on parks, where you had the parks personnel and the chart, you had the narrative about the parks, and so on. I spoke to Mr. Manfredi. Perhaps we can get this back again. I'd like to see it in this budget. This budget is going to be used to compare to other budgets. So I'd like to see that happen in this budget. We do need to have so right now we have the narrative in front, then we go into the budget things. So if you're looking for something, you're looking all over the 455 pages. That's not working out too well. The tax collector, still a problem. If I look at the tax collector, I don't see anywhere where his mortgage income shows up. There's still major problems with that. That needs to be done. This tax collector has enough, the amount of money that flows through that office that is not properly laid out is just ripe for wrongdoing. And we've had a lot of it in this township, as you may know. We've had 2 tax collectors run away with the township treasury and one that got some deficiencies along the way. That would be the current one. The police extracurricular activities, if you read this budget, you will find, I would like to know if the police went from 35% of the budget up to 50% of the budget, and now command $20 million and have extracurricular activities literally out the wazoo. Is our crime down? I'd like to know. That needs to be a factor that you know before you approve this budget. Because if our crime is not down, and some of that reporting has not been terrific either, if that crime is not down, you should not be approving that much for the police. Okay? It's very, very important. And I will just mention one thing. So we have something like Coffee with a Cop, okay, where you're actually the police are looking for people to come and talk to them. While we have people who are victims of crime and people wanting to talk about other issues of crime that can't get a policeman to respond. So that's a big issue, and those extracurriculars need to be looked at and the cost of them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Ms. Lehman, I was aware that Township Manager Manfredi and our finance officer were going to spend time with you, so I applaud their efforts in trying to help you sort through some of the issues that you had. So
Yeah,
hopefully
they've been terrific. I really appreciate
your
that.
commenting to the positive to that effect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the public on the proposed 2018 annual budget? Comments from the public?
President Luker, may I say something after the comments?
Yes, let's see if there's any more comment. Anyone else want to speak on the budget? Okay, hearing none. Commissioner Myers?
Thank you. Mrs. Lehman spoke about the police department and the victims not being taken care of. I know the commissioners on this board know this, and it's important that everyone knows this, that we have a victim services program. And every victim of every crime in this township, whether it's minor and very rarely major, but if that happens, is contacted by trained volunteers and followed up on, and if they need a police officer to help them with that follow-up, that is what happens. They also receive a letter from the police department giving them all the contact information that they need should they have a problem later on. So if that's one of the extracurricular activities talked about, I think it's pretty necessary.
Any other comments? Commissioner Spiegelman.
Thank you, President Luker. Since Commissioner Myers very accurately sort of broke the ice on responding to that comment, I will say the parks information that was described as not being in the budget is located on page 33 under the heading Parks and Recreation. Thank you.
All right, any other comments from commissioners? If there are none, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. This will conclude our special meeting of the fiscal year 2018 proposed budget. A public meeting will be held on December 14, 2017 at 7 p.m. in the same room of the Abington Township Administrative Building for the purpose of adopting fiscal year 2018 annual budget and adopting ordinance number 2148, setting the tax levy and appropriations for calendar year 2018. So with that, are there any other closing comments? Hearing none?
Wait.
Oh, Commissioner Klein.
I just want to make sure, before we close, do we need to do anything with the advertising of the ordinance?
With the passing of the proposed budget, we're required to advertise that
I
ordinance.
didn't make sure we didn't have to do a
Yep,
separate.
so we will advertise that ordinance based upon your adoption here this evening.
Thank you.
If there is no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your attention.